Hi everyone, so today I thought I would talk about struggles in relationships. I thought I'd talk about this because relationships are hard, and especially if you've got like autism or Asperger's syndrome or anything like that, it makes them like 10 times harder. And with programs like The Undateables, it sort of like shed a light on what it's like, but I thought I would talk about like my experiences, which might be hard. Yeah, so I'm on like my third relationship, like I'm 23, so only being in like 3 relationships, it's like not a lot. And the reason that I didn't have a lot of relationships, especially when I was younger, was because like I wasn't interested in that sort of thing. I wasn't too bothered. Like all my friends were like, oh, I would like a boyfriend, oh, I'd like a boyfriend, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, I'm not actually bothered. It just didn't bother me. It wasn't top of my list on things to do, and because of that, I got like called like names, and oh, you must be asexual, oh, there's something wrong with you, oh, you're a lesbian because you don't like me, kind of thing. But no, like nothing like that. It wasn't top of my list. My first relationship was when I was 19, and it wasn't serious at all. I knew it wasn't gonna last. I think I lasted like 2-3 months or something like that. But the guy I was with like didn't understand autism, and I think he used me as like a project to learn because he was going to uni and things like that. And stuff like that really hurt me. I remember sitting at the cinema crying my eyes out, and he would just walk away and he would say that I'm putting things on. It was bad, but I knew it was going to end, so like no biggie. It was like I enjoyed the time that we had together and going out and things like that, but it wasn't good at all. But I learned from it. And my next relationship, you've probably seen him in previous videos, was with a guy called Stephen, and we got engaged and things, and yeah, I thought that was forever. Like, we were together nearly like 2 years, but there were things that I did find difficult, and even in my relationship now, I do find these things difficult. And I thought I would just share with you some of the things. Adapting is really hard. I find that difficult, and if someone's like, I'm trying to think on how to put it, like adapting to the new situations, and yeah, if someone does something different to me or views things different, I find that very hard to sort of adapt to their way or sort of adjust my way of doing things. Like, I like things to be planned, and this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and that is my autism. I just like everything. I like to know what's happening, and a lot of people like to be spontaneous, and they're like, oh, plans change, and oh, it's no biggie, and that did cause quite a bit of problems. And yeah, even now it does cause some difficulties, but the partner I'm with now, he's quite similar to me, and he'll tell me things how they are, so that is so much better for me, because like if I'm pissing him off, he'll tell me that I'm pissing him off. So then I'm like, okay, that's a bit harsh, but I know not to do that. So I find that very good, and most of the times in relationships they're like, oh, I don't want to tell them that they're annoying me because, oh, it'll upset them. So like in my past relationship, I had no idea, you know, not a clue. So that does cause problems. Making time for people, I think everyone finds that difficult. But I'm very much like, if I'm with someone and I've got like a day off work or whatever, I'll say, do you want to do anything this day, before making plans with friends. And making time is hard, but I'm very precise in my planning. Like, I have a calendar and it's like starting work now, finish then. So I'm like really precise in my planning, and other people aren't. So I find that very difficult when they don't allocate that time to make with me, and that is quite hard. But that's not just with like relationships, that'll be with like friendships and things as well. It's really quite difficult. Decisions. You know, when you're like in a couple and there's like a decision to be made, everyone expects the female to make that decision, and that annoys me and I find that quite difficult in the fact that I want a partner's input. And I don't know if I'm like the only one, but yeah, I hate making decisions. It's one of my worst points. Like, I find it so difficult, and I'm like, oh, did I make the right one? And what was if I'm annoying them? What was if I don't like them? And my mind goes like mental, and I find that really difficult. Whereas, like, when I was moving in with my ex, like, I wanted him to decide where we put things, and I wanted him to help decide the sofa, and I wanted him to help, but it was like, oh, whatever, like, you can decide, or blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, no, and that causes a lot of problems. I don't like being the one that takes charge. No, I want input and decisions made when I ask, and I find that really difficult. Understanding, that's a really difficult one, because everyone's hard to understand, and I know I'm really hard to understand. Like, I've got my ways of doing things, and I've got my precise routines, and people don't really understand why I'm like that. Like, I have to have things done a certain way, I have to eat a certain brand of food because I'm scared another one will make me sick, and that causes a lot of problems. But I'm so open about it that I don't see it as a problem, I just see it as me. But then in relationship, like, people are like, but why can't you, like, adapt, or why can't you change? And I'm like, but I don't want to change, I like the way I am, and that's always going to cause problems. And I think, yeah, it's really hard. Like, I like my routine. I don't like people turning up out of the blue. And I remember with my ex, we were in our own flat, and it was the evening, and in the evening I like to relax, unwind, I like to chill, I like to watch my telly or whatever. And he was just like, oh, my dad and his mate and his son is coming round, and I'm like, well, I'm in my jammies for one, and they're like, oh, I'll be here in 5 minutes, and it was like totally out of the blue, and I ended up getting really anxious and freaked out. So I went to the bedroom, and then everyone was like, oh, she's so rude, and I'm like, well, no, because it's my house and my safe place, and people are just coming in unannounced. But I did end up just sitting there for a while and going, right, this is stupid, so I probably should go through. But it was awful, I don't like that, and he couldn't understand why I was like that. And you're never going to understand someone else, never. But I think you've got to sort of, like, get used to their ways. There's no point in trying to change someone. Just go with the way they are, because that's them, and you should be with them for them, not to change. And I hate, it's mostly girls that say this, I hate people that are like, oh, I can change him and he should do this. And I'm like, okay, but why? And I think, looking back, like, with the decisions, if someone doesn't want to make a decision on something, why should I try and force them? And that's a wee bit of reflection on my part, and I think I am learning, and in my new relationship I'm different, I think. I hope I am anyway. I try not to be as pushy. I try not to force someone, and it's hard, because my new relationship that I'm in now, it's my best friend's brother, so that makes it difficult, in a way, but in a way it's good. And then I've not met him when I was like 11, and then we've just got together back in October, so we've not been together that long, so it's still kind of new, but everything went so fast, and that's really difficult when things go too fast. And I see people do that, and I'm like, why are you rushing? But everything went fast from moving in and things, but it had to. We had no other option. So I think we've adapted together, and it's not been easy, and there's been times when I've been like, I can't cope with this, but then I just sort of like, you should go with the flow and see what happens, not put too many hopes on things, and just enjoy yourself, enjoy your time together. That would be my advice. But relationships are a learning curve, and you're never going to understand them, and you're never going to know what's going to happen. So enjoy the time that you have.